gathering us together to be able to commune with Him, to hear from Him. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the whole house. And yeah, I would just like to start and let me share my screen. Okay, so Tuesdays continue to be the Porter's Leadership Series. So the reason for this program is to prepare Christians for leadership roles, both in our places of work, in our everyday life, wherever we are. It doesn't matter how exclusive or how random it is. The idea for this program is for us to be better people, for us to be better leaders, for us to take initiative. And it's for us to get better doing this by referring to what the Bible has spoken to us about leadership and how we could be better all around, taking instructions and the rules from the Bible. So on today's topic, what we're going to be discussing about is balancing stakeholders' interests. And we're going to be taking our illustration and the perspective of the Bible in terms of balancing stakeholders' interests. So of course, this continues to be a leadership series. And what does the Bible talk to us about in terms of principles of leadership? From my research, the three main words that come into mind is integrity, stewardship, and servant leadership. So integrity, what does that mean? So that's consistency between actions and values, honesty and moral uprightness. So that's consistency between actions and values. What you believe and what you do, you should speak the same thing. It's not I mean, I know there's a saying that say, is it, how did they say that then? Do what I do, I be, do what I say, something like that. But yeah, your values and your actions need to be the same thing. What you say out there, what you think, what you paint that you are, it needs to align with your actions. So it needs to align with what you do every day. A biblical passage could be seen in Proverbs 11, verse 3, which say the integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. So you cannot be two-faced, you cannot be lukewarm, you cannot be this, you cannot be that. In order for you to be a great leader, you need to have integrity. You need to stand for what is right. You need to stand for what is true. The next is stewardship. Stewardship is responsible. I mean, the definition is someone is responsible management and care of resources entrusted to us by God. So managing everything that's been given to you by God, managing your time, managing your resources, managing your network, your connection, managing those under you. So people you work with, people you work under, everything. So I think that could all be under the umbrella of stewardship. So just responsible management and care for everything that has been granted to you. The Bible passage is Luke 16 verse 10, who says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So yeah, speaks for itself. Whatever you're doing, in whatever space you find yourself, you need to practice good stewardship. You need to be able to manage whatever is given to you. It doesn't matter how small, how big. I mean, there's a parable that talks about the people who were given different talents, the one that was given 10 talents, the one that was given five, the one that was given two. I mean, we know the Bible, so yeah. But what is encouraging us is for us to be good leaders. We need to practice integrity first, which is aligning your value and aligning your action as well. And you need to practice good stewardship, which basically talks about managing everything that has been given to you, managing it judiciously, managing it religiously. And yeah, the final framework here is servant leadership. So this is practicing leadership that's been characterized by humanity, service, and focus on the needs of others. So it's not just about you. Whatever has been handed to you by God on earth is not for you alone, it's for everyone around you. A passage could be Matthew 20:26 to 28. So whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. So yeah, I know in the Bible, I think Jesus also referred us to children, or maybe I'm mixing that up. Maybe that could be for a different context. But for you to be great, you also need to be little. Little in the sense that you don't have to make yourself out there for people to stomp on you, but you should be able to attend to the needs of everyone around you, no matter how small, no matter how big they are. You should be an everybody's person and you should be responsible for others. So again, the three main frameworks and principles of leadership is integrity, stewardship, and servant leadership. So back to the topic of today that speaks about stakeholders. What is the definition of who can you call a stakeholder? A stakeholder could be an individual or group who has a vested interest in the success or outcome of an organization or project. So whoever is interested in the outcome or the success of an organization, a project, or whatever it is that is being worked on, whatever it is people have planned, that is a stakeholder. Importance of recognizing stakeholders, they can impact or be impacted by decision made by individuals. And the examples of stakeholders could be your employees, your customers, your shareholders, your community. This is more of a context of the corporate space. So yeah, but let's remember the definition of who a stakeholder is. So a stakeholder is anybody. It could be an individual, it could be a group, or anybody who is interested or who has a vested interest in the success or the outcome of whatever project that you're working on, or in a generation or in an organization at large. Let's remember that because in my next slide, yes, some biblical examples, right? We all know what happened to Joseph when Potiphar had a dream. This could be found in the book of Genesis, chapter 41 to 45. Yes, the chapters of Genesis 41 to 45. So, Bible students, I'm sure we all know this, but Pharaoh had a dream, the ruler of Israel, then he saw, he was at the bank of the river, and then he saw seven fat cows and then seven slim cows, and then the slim cows came and swallowed the fat cows, and they called upon Joseph to interpret the dream. I really believe we all know the story, but from the definition of stakeholders, let me just go back to that slide, which is whoever is interested in the outcome of an event or in the success of an event or a project. In this case of Joseph, so there was going to be a famine, right, in Egypt, and Joseph needed to save grains because there was going to be abundance in 7 years, and then for the next 7 years there was going to be scarcity. So there was going to be a famine, there was going to be a drought. So he needed to save grains for the 7 years of abundance for them to be able to have sufficient for the 7 years of deficit or famine. From that story, please, I want to ask, who do we think are the stakeholders from that story? So for the 14 years that this happened, the famine and the abundance and the famine, who do we think are the major stakeholders in this event? So the floor is open. Feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to add your responses on the chat box. There are multiple stakeholders. I have my answers. I will show you, but I want to hear from the house. This is not going to be just me. So who were the stakeholders from the event of Genesis 41 to 45? I'm going to open the chat box, hopefully for someone to respond. And if you want, you can unmute yourself and speak, please.
The Egyptians.
The Egyptians, that's one. So the community at large, yes. Were there other stakeholders? Bible students, who were the stakeholders? So I'll go back to the definition of stakeholders just for clarity. Whoever is going to be interested in the outcome of a project or a project or an organization, or someone who is interested in the outcome, someone who's going to benefit from it. So yes, Joseph, the famine that happened in Egypt. So yes, someone said trade partners. with the Egyptians. Mm-hmm.
The king of
So
Egypt.
someone said the king of Egypt was Pharaoh and the Israelites. Yes, so the Israelites were trade partners as well. Someone said Joseph. Thank you, Ruth. Um, so yeah, I think I've gotten the community. I think I've gotten Pharaoh, who was the ruler. I think I've gotten Joseph. And I think I've gotten trade partners, who are the Israelites and other people who came from across the globe to come and buy grains from the Egyptians. So here are my answers. My answers don't want to show. Of course, you have Pharaoh, you have the Egyptian officials, you have Joseph's family, you have the Egyptian population, you have foreign nations, you have God. It's important to add God because it was all for his glory. And of course, he was interested in the success of, he did not want people to starve to death. So it was the reason why he revealed to Pharaoh 14 years. He revealed to Pharaoh 7 years, even before the drought happened. So that's one. Thank you all for those who responded. I have another question. This is a bit more tricky because it's not a story we all might be that familiar with, but this is Nehemiah 4 that speaks about Nehemiah going back to build the wall. To build the wall after the Babylonians had come to destroy Israel. So full story, he had to go back to build a wall in order for protection, and there were certain people around him who were not happy about the wall that he was going to build. But yeah, another question regarding that, who do we think are the stakeholders? Who do we think were the people interested in the outcome of this project? I've already mentioned one, but yeah, I'm open to answers. Please flood the chat box and feel free to unmute yourself. I've shown my answer.
Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah, in the case of Nehemiah's own, the like you said, the answer is a bit tricky. Of course, Nehemiah is a major stakeholder. You have the Israelites who are also stakeholders. But somehow the king that permitted him to go and even offered assistance happened to be a stakeholder in a way, because, of course, before he gave the permission, he also had the outcome in view. And then now have these other people, Sambalat, Tobias, and Gershom of Arabia, who were, if there's anyone like negative stakeholders, they were also stakeholders, except that they wanted to see the project fail. So I think we have like three groups of people there now. Nehemiah and his people on one side, the king on the other side, Tobias, Sambalat, and Gershom of Arabia on the other side. Those three groups form stakeholders, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. You have answered it perfectly because yes, and that's correct. It's not just positive stakeholders, you also have negative stakeholders. As long as you're interested in the outcome could either be a success or a failure. You're also a stakeholder. So of course you have Nehemiah, you have the Israelites, you have the local officials. People who didn't want the project to go through because they were worried for something or the other of I don't know, security purpose, or they were sure not wanting the project to come true. And you have the neighboring nations, every other person around there that could gain from the wall in terms of it could protect them, it could also restrict them in one way or another. But yes, thank you, Mr. Stevens. Perfect answer. Jesus feeding the 5,000 people. So this is another illustration. Yeah, we all know about the story. Jesus fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. When they went to the desert, he saw a multitude. He felt compassion for them and he could not send them away. Even though his disciples were worried about how he was going to feed them, he had to make provision. So in this case, who do we think were the major stakeholders? So the purpose of this question or this exercise is just for us to understand the meaning of what it means to be a stakeholder. So let's go ahead. Who do we think were the major stakeholders for this?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I think for me, Jesus and his disciples were the stakeholder because they are the people with a mission. They are the people with the core mission. Then the audience were not stakeholders, they only came to tap into the mandate of Christ and his disciples. Christ and his disciples were the stakeholders in this case, yes.
Well, thank you so much for that, Gary. Partly right, 70% right. But I think the audience, there were also people that were going to benefit from the outcome of him feeding them because they were the ones that were eating the food. So they were going to benefit. They were not going to leave there hungry. And yeah, so I see them also as stakeholders. Of course, Jesus, his disciples, the population who also came to listen because they were even the top beneficiaries. Of course, Jesus, because he glorified God by feeding them and he performed the miracle, the disciples as well, and of course the population who came to eat. So yeah,
Sorry,
thank
before you go ahead, can I ask a question?
we would have a session for question and answer.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So I don't know if you can see, but what are the common causalities of stakeholder dissatisfaction or conflict of interest? So what are the things that could cause people to have varying view, people to be negative stakeholders, people to be positive stakeholders? I mean, we'll have a lot, but these are just a few: communication issues, decision-making authorities, value proposition, personal interest, collective interest, cultural differences, religious differences, ethical consideration, and so on and so forth. The list could go on and on and on, but there are lots. There are so many reasons why people, I mean, a lot of it just has to do with greed. These people want something to benefit them. These other people don't want something to benefit them. And the purpose for us to have this series, the purpose for us talking about the balancing stakeholders' interest is for us to be less self-centered and for everything to do in terms of decision making to give glory to God and not to just put one aspect better than the other. Let's go on. What are the challenges in balancing stakeholders' interests? We've talked about the causes for stakeholder dissatisfaction and um, variances in interest. So challenges now for balancing stakeholders' interest. We have conflicting priorities in terms of your corporate workspace. You have balancing profit margins with employee well-being. Do you need people to work 12 hours a day for you to make more profits, or do you need your people to have some certain level of work-life balance? This could be a cause of stakeholders. I mean, dissatisfaction, limited resources, allocating funds or time among various stakeholders need. Are you allocating all your funds to your R&D department, or are you allocating some of these funds to quality assurance to make sure that whatever the R&D has seen, whatever the R&D has developed is done properly? I mean, quality assurance has given the go ahead so that it doesn't go out to the public and harms the public. I mean, maintaining transparency, communicating decision openly among stakeholders. These are part of the reasons why you have stakeholders dissatisfaction. Now, what are the strategies? We've spoken about the stakeholders, we've spoken about the problems, we've spoken about the challenges. Now we're trying to see the ways of balancing or the ways to balance stakeholders' interests. You have seek God's guardians, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and every other thing will be added unto you. For you to have the wisdom to balance stakeholders' interests properly, that everyone is happy at the end of the day, you need to seek the guidance of God. So this is emphasizing the importance of prayer and seeking wisdom from God in decision making. You need to practice humility and empathy. So treating stakeholders with humility and empathy, recognizing that their perspective counts. In most businesses, it has to do with customers, it has to do with your staff, it has to do with your shareholders. In every way, your shareholders want to make more profits. The customers, they want to pay less, or they want to keep the price of um, your goods or services at par. They don't want a drastic increase. Of course, your staff too, they want increased salary. So there is one thing or another that is always causing conflict. But then in every way, you need to put everybody at how do I say this? You need to consider everybody And you pray to God at first, you consider all of them and hear their perspective, hear their needs, and ensure that everyone is satisfied. Also, transparency is quite important. Fostering transparency, communicates openly and honestly with stakeholders, even in difficult situations. I think transparency is something that is quite key. Transparency and communication, it doesn't just have to do with when you're managing stakeholders, it has to do with every aspect of your life because it's quite important, even in your marriage, even in your relationships, and at every aspect of your life, please practice transparency and communication. A biblical example could be Paul's approach to leadership and humility. This could be found in Philippians 2, 3 to 4. It says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility, value others above yourself. I think that still points us to the three principles of leadership in the beginning of the presentation that speaks about servant leadership, which is leaders being characterized by humility, service, and focus on others' needs. So it doesn't have to be you. For you to be able to balance effectively stakeholders' interests, seek God, uh, practice humility and empathy. That's putting yourself in other people's shoes. And this is the shoes of literally everybody, every stakeholder who is present. Foster transparency, ensure that communication is done properly no matter the situation. Don't care if this will hurt these people and benefit this, but I know. Let everybody know what's happening. And then, of course, yeah, just being good to others and practicing servant leadership. So we'll have a couple of case study. Because of time, I might not run through everything, but you have Mary Barra, who is the CEO of General Motors. General Motors, they're the ones responsible for your GMC, your Chevrolet. They do a lot of cars, Dodge, Chryslers, and on and on and on. I know there's a thing, it might not be in Nigeria because Nigeria is Nigeria, but there's a thing in the automobile world that they call recalls. So if a car has some defects, they recall them back. And of course, this hurts the profit margins of the company. I know there was a popular actor that died a couple of years ago because the car he bought was from General Motors and it had a defect. So when you put your car on park and you put your handbrake, after a while, your car turns, if it's on a slope, your car could be in motion. So I think he was going to open his gates and his car pinned him down and crushed him. It was really sad, but because of that, yeah, action needed to be taken. So what she did was, notwithstanding the profit that they were going to lose from this total recall, I think Tesla is having a similar situation at this moment. Notwithstanding the profit, she understands the needs of the consumer, safety needs of the consumer, and she put everybody together just to ensure that everyone is satisfied. For PepsiCo, we all know Pepsi, sugar, diabetics, harmful to the health. The CEO thought it was good to have how do I say it? To have some of their products that could be less harmful to the community. So they came out with some diet products, diet Pepsi, and on and on. So the presentation is going to be available for everyone. We can read this. Let's just move ahead. Yes, this is where we get to the question and answer session. I know there's a lot of difficulty that comes with managing stakeholders' interests, but feel free to ask your questions. By the grace of God, maybe not me, but the entire house as a whole will be able to deliberate and provide clarity to all your questions. So just, yeah, please let's go ahead. Let's feel free to ask whatever questions you have.
Can I ask something?
Please go ahead.
So I've been watching your presentation, right? And I don't really get like what it's about, like could you
Okay,
please?
so this is Porter's Outreach Leadership Series. I said this at the beginning. So it's Porter's Outreach Leadership Series, and the goal of this series is to teach Christians how to be better leaders in every ramification. So the topic in focus for today is balancing stakeholders' interests. So what we've done so far is speak to the definition of stakeholders, um, talk about biblical examples of how, Bible characters managed the interests of different stakeholders and in different events. We spoke about Joseph. when he was in Egypt and when there was a crisis in terms of famine. We spoke about Nehemiah when he was building a wall. We also spoke about Jesus when he fed 5,000 people. So these were examples of how people, Bible characters manage different stakeholders. We spoke about the common things that causes stakeholder conflict. I mean, in terms of conflict of interest. And I think we also spoke about how to manage stakeholders' interests. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get it. Okay, okay. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Do I have any other questions? I think Mr. Stanley had a question earlier.
Yes, I had a question earlier, but I think I'll skip that for now. But I want to. Am I permitted to make a contribution or like an observation? Is it permitted?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Now you gave several examples, particularly the case of Jesus feeding the 5,000, what the disciples did, and all of that. We saw pragmatism, we saw spirituality, we saw organization, if you know the whole story about that. I'm sure you know the story. Now, this is one thing I have seen in the Christendom when we are faced with certain challenges as stakeholders. We tend to spiritualize everything. We don't create a proper balance. The first thing we'll look at, like in the case of Jesus feeding the people, after having what we'll call a crusade today, an outreach, successful one, and the people were hungry, he didn't want to let them go. What he did at first was, how do we feed these people? Disciples came up with a lot of suggestions. And somebody said among them, look, if you have so amount of money to go and buy bread, can you even feed this number of people? And in the midst of it, we know the rest of the story. Our own time as believers, a lot of times is either we forget the aspect of the divine aspect of it and chase after things and then come back afterwards to try and bring God into our plans. Or on the other side of it, all we do is spiritualize the thing. Let's go and pray and wait for manna to fall from heaven. If you check Nehemiah, the same thing. He had a challenge. He prayed. He walked. Faith and pragmatism met, and they got results. Our own time, one of the things we need to do is learn to create a balance between our faith and what we have on ground. Unfortunately, to a large extent, you don't see that, excuse me, particularly in Christian organizations. Let's not remove the fact that we're believers and our respective place of worship also fall under what we'll call where we have where we are stakeholders. So whatever we're able to build there is also going to reflect in the way we build outside. And if you're effective builders in the house, we'll become effective builders out there also. Permit me to use the word there, out there in the world. So one of the things I expected to hear was how to create that balance. Church life, so to speak, and work life out there, create a balance so that our effectiveness is not only as Christians in the church. By the way, our Christianity is not meant to be only in the church, it's meant to be out there in the world. That's why our testimony speaks the loudest. We should be able to balance these things so that we know that when we go out there, we represent a kingdom and it's exemplary. People see it and they can tell this is where this is coming from. I don't know if I was able to properly communicate this, but that's what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was pretty clear. Thank you so much, Mr. Stevens. Sister Malola, I think I saw your hands raised.
Yes, my hand is still raised. Good evening, everyone. Please confirm that you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I learned a lot and I had a good time listening to your talk on balancing stakeholder interest. Yeah, so while I listened, I was just reflecting to myself, so okay, as a young person, how do I lead myself to achieve my objectives? I don't run an organization. I don't have a firm. but probably I'm working for someone, or I'm still a student looking to pass my exam. How do I lead myself to achieve my objectives? Who are my stakeholders in the context of my own scenario? So those were the thoughts that came to my mind, and I'd just like to share. So I'm saying, as a student, I probably have parents, I have siblings, I have classmates in school, I have my teachers. All of those are my stakeholders. And then, of course, I also have the negative ones. I have my competitors. I have people in my class who are vying to win as well. And then maybe win at the expense of somebody else. So the question for me is, how do I ensure that I'm able to balance everybody? So as a student, I shouldn't get too busy that I don't have time for my family members. By communicating effectively with them, I'm able to carry them along and let them know, okay, this is my schedule. I'm busy at this time. I'm available at this time. Okay, well, we'll not talk for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then at the end of the process, I'll make our time and we'll all be together. So I'm thinking those are ways in which we as individuals can lead ourselves to achieve our objectives. And it would only be possible when I'm clear on what I want to achieve. If I know what my objectives, I'm able to identify those are in support of my mission, those are not in support, those I feel I can leverage on in terms of getting resources, those I need to go and sit with to even learn what I need to know in order to achieve those objectives. So I would say that's another perspective to balancing stakeholder interest. As a mother, I know my children are also my stakeholders. I need to ensure that they are also well taken care of, they are in a good shape, in order for me to be able to focus on those objectives I want to achieve. As a wife, I know I need to manage my husband too, just so that he's also able to support me to achieve my objectives. At the place of work, I probably have my manager or a sponsor who is interested in my success. I should be able to also ensure that I'm carrying that person along for that to be able to benefit. Yeah, so I'm saying, in addition to being at the place of work, running a business, making profit for the shareholders, another perspective would also be to look at how am I leading myself to achieve my objectives? Who are my stakeholders, positive or negative, within my own sphere of life? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Estella. Actually, this was another topic I was going to speak about, but I don't think time would permit. I think everything you just said goes under the umbrella of prioritizing. It is very important to prioritizing. I hope I believe one of the topics for this series should be managing prioritizing. And in economics, we have a term that says the next best alternative for going to I've left school, I've forgotten some of these things, but you need to be able to prioritize in literally every aspect of life. It's a topic that should fall under managing stakeholders. But yes, thank you so much for your contribution. Of course, the goal of this is to learn, and the goal of this is to understand that prayer comes in every way. So whatever it is that we're thinking, whatever project it is that we're doing, let's learn to seek God for Him to instruct us on how to prioritize and which it is that we should put before the other. So again, thank you so much, Sister Lola. I see hands raised from Jens M. Please go ahead
Hello.
for me, sister. Hi.
I don't have a question, but I want to give you some feedback. It's really hard to understand you, and maybe you can speak next time a little bit more clearly because you speak like a fucking monkey, you know what I mean?
Okay, that's fine. Sorry about that. Maybe the next time I could just put a subtitle, so at least it should help us understand better. But anyways, thank you.
Please kick him. Please kick him.
Yeah, I know. He just came to spam. It's
Why?
fine.
It's my opinion.
You're obviously a racist, and
It's
please
fine,
get
actually. It's absolutely fine. So, let's just go ahead. Do I have any other questions? I want to check the chat box. So I have a question from Sister Ruth. If your stakeholders are varying degrees, who do you prioritize? If your stakeholders are varying degrees, I believe every stakeholder is varying degree. But in terms of prioritizing, you need to consider certain things. I mean, maybe that's actually a point I should have added, things to consider when you're prioritizing. But as I said, that should be a topic for another day. But I don't know. Does anybody have a question today? So the question is, in your stakeholders are varying degrees. So I can imagine what she means by varying degrees are, let's say, different portfolios of people. Who do you prioritize? Does anyone have a question to this? Does anyone have an answer to this, sir?
I think that is down to the vision, the purpose for whatever it is, a project, the goal, whatever it is, will determine who we prioritize. Like Bible will say, let's quote a bit of Bible. Say, where there's no vision, the people perish. If there's a vision, we know what we aim at achieving. So that will determine who we consider a stakeholder. To a large extent, if I'm going to build cars, for instance, and I want to start, I won't be looking for a bricklayer. I won't be looking for a tailor. I'll be looking for engineers, software developers, and things like that. So my stakeholders will be determined by my vision, my goal, whatever I want to do. So that will help determine what I prioritize over what. My take on that, I stand to be corrected.
Thank you. I think that's actually valid. The vision, what you aim to achieve, you can then use that to prioritize your stakeholders. So what you aim to achieve for whatever project you're running on, you can then use that to determine who the stakeholders are you're looking to achieve. So for instance, at my place of work, my major stakeholders are my clients. So in terms of priority, I put my clients even before my colleagues or myself. I'm ready to go the length, go the limits in order for my clients to be satisfied. I get that's part of my customer service skills, but that's just how I see it. And the value and the mission of the organization, because I am from the business to business part of the sales, business to business part of the organization, and not the business to, how do I explain it? So my organization, the major stakeholders are organizations, so other organizations, because we're service providers. So that's B2B. We also do with B2Cs. So B2Cs are contractors. Because what I do where I work is people who are looking to move jobs, or you're looking to get a job in one place or the other. So I have organizations, a separate stakeholders. I have contractors. My job as a middleman is to merge these two people together. So you're looking for this. I have this person who is able to give you the skills you're looking for. So because I release most of the clients, my major stakeholders are the clients, even before myself, even before my colleagues who will all run around to do the job together. I mean, the other
Excuse
guys who
me,
deal
I
with the
have another
contractors.
question. I want to start a business.
Sorry about that. The other guys who are responsible for, sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, so the other guys who are responsible for dealing with the contractors, their major stakeholders as well should be the contractors, because they come first. If the contractors are not happy, we're not making money. If my clients are not happy, we're not making money. Money is not the key part of the business. Money is not the goal of the business, but of course, is to make those people happy, to find the right talent for a job. So employing people and ensuring that the project, whatever is being done by an organization, is done by the right set of people. So for me, my major stakeholders in my place of work, it's always the clients. I posted on LinkedIn a couple of months ago, and some people are reacting. I'm like, if conflict of interest rises up between my clients and my colleague, I will always choose the client. Of course, it's important. I'm not saying you abandon one side. That's not the purpose of this whole thing. That's not the purpose of this whole conversation. Listen to both ends, but you know how they say it in the corporate world, the customer is always right. So yeah. I hope I answered your question, Ruth, with giving such a long answer. So this is 8 o'clock. I don't know if I have any other questions, but if we do, let's be brief about it so that we can quickly go into the prayer request session. Okay, if not, Emmanuel, please could you take over?
All right, thank you very much, Ebenezer. Thank you for that very elaborate and convincing presentation. one of my take homes from what you have presented tonight is having empathy when you are balancing stakeholders' interest. Having empathy is very, very important for every leader or everyone, regardless of your status, because you are a stakeholder wherever you are, and having empathy is very important as well. So thank you very much. And my prayer is that God will continue to bless the work of your hands. God will continue to elevate you. I believe we all have learned a lot from this presentation tonight. It's time for, before we go on to the prayer request, if you have friends who could not join this program tonight, you could share our YouTube page with them to join us.